I was lying on my couch with a 101-degree fever when my mom called asking for $50,000. Not asking how I was doing, not noticing I sounded terrible. Just, Leora needed money for her residency program, and I was the only one in the family who could help. I said I would think about it. 20 minutes later, Leora texted. Then Evander, her fiancé, texted. Then my mom texted again. Nobody asked if I was okay. Nobody knew I was sick. That was the moment I stopped pretending I did not see the pattern. Before I tell you everything that happened next, I want to know where you are watching from today. Drop your city or country in the comments right now. And if you have ever been the person your family only calls when they need something, hit that like button and subscribe because this story is for you. Stay with me, because what I did at my brother Finton's graduation dinner is something nobody in my family saw coming. Let me go back to the beginning, because the phone call did not happen in a vacuum. It was the result of years of a very specific dynamic that I had been living inside of without fully naming it. When I got into college on a full academic scholarship, my family was busy celebrating Leora getting accepted to medical school. I do not say that with bitterness. I say it because it set the tone for everything that came after. Nobody sat down and asked me where I was going, what I had earned, what I was planning. The attention in our house had one direction, and I was not in it. I paid for the remaining costs of my education myself. I worked as a bartender 4 nights a week at a bar near campus. My feet hurt every single night, and my clothes always carried the smell of the place. I did not mind it. That job paid for textbooks, fees, and rent. Every dollar I earned felt like proof that I could handle my own life. My major was economics, but I spent a lot of my free time teaching myself to code. I had noticed something specific. Small and mid-sized companies in the United States had no clean, simple tools for managing export orders to Europe and Asia. The process was manual, slow, and full of errors. I built a small program to fix that problem. I showed it to a few business owners I knew through the bar. They liked it. They paid me for it. That was the first time anyone paid me for something I had created from nothing. After graduation, I rented a small room and turned the corner of the garage into a workspace. 1 folding table, 1 older laptop, a shared internet connection, and a notebook full of handwritten plans. No investors, no advisor, no safety net. My dad called once during that first year to ask what I was doing. I explained the export management software. He listened for a few minutes and then said, "Why don't you just get a job at a real company? This hobby of yours does not sound practical." The call was over in 4 minutes. My mom never called to ask about my work, not once. Year 2, my first 3 serious clients in Texas and Ohio. I hired one person, a recent graduate named Dex, who later became my head of engineering. Year 3, I expanded into Canada and the United Kingdom. Revenue crossed 7 figures for the first time. I moved out of the garage and into an actual office. Year 4, the software was active in 14 countries. A venture fund in San Francisco reached out. Year 5, 21 employees, presence in 30 countries, revenue solidly in 8 figures. I was 31 years old. I did not tell my family any of this, not because I was hiding it, because they never asked. At a Christmas dinner the year I turned 30, my dad was pouring wine for the table and said to a neighbor, "Leora is in her residency program now. She is our real doctor in the family." I was sitting at the far end of the table. I had spent that afternoon helping prepare the food. I did not say anything. My mom walked past my laptop screen once while I was reviewing a quarterly financial report and said, "What game is this?" I told her it was my work. She nodded once, then turned to ask Leora if she needed a new winter coat. Finton was the only person in my family who ever asked what I was building. He was still in high school when I started the company. He called me one evening and said, "So what exactly are you making?" I told him. He listened to the whole explanation and said, "That is genuinely impressive. Nobody else in that house ever said those words to me." I kept that memory for a long time. After the phone call where my mom asked for $50,000, I did not respond right away. I let a week pass. During that week I received 3 more messages from my mom, 2 from Leora and 1 from my dad. My dad's message was the one that stopped me. He wrote, "The family needs your help. This is the time for you to show responsibility." The word responsibility in that message did not feel like a family reaching out. It felt like a demand written in careful language. I called Sloan, my personal financial advisor who I had been working with for 3 years. Sloan was a former federal auditor in her mid-40s. She did not waste words. I told her, I need to understand what is actually happening with my family's finances. I need numbers, not feelings. She said, give me 2 weeks. 11 days later, she sent me a 34-page document. The first section, my parents were carrying a total debt of $1 million. This included credit cards, a bank loan, and a private loan from an individual investor taken out 4 years earlier. The primary collateral on the private loan was their house. The second section, my father, who had spent years working as an independent financial advisor, had his professional license revoked by the Securities and Exchange Commission 18 months earlier. The reason was unsuitable investment advice that caused documented losses for 3 clients. He could not legally practice in his field. Their household had almost no income. I read that page twice. He had never told me, not a word. Page 17 of the document contained a shorter note with attached records. While investigating the financial picture, Sloan had come across an internal disciplinary report from the medical school Leora had attended before her current residency program. The report involved an incident during Leora's final year, evidence suggesting she had used unauthorized materials during a diagnostic imaging exam. The matter was handled internally, no public record was created, and Leora graduated. The issue was never resolved publicly. Additionally, Sloan had identified a discrepancy between the standardized test scores listed on Leora's graduate school application and the official scores still accessible through a public records channel. The numbers did not match. Sloan noted clearly, this is not enough to draw a conclusion, but it is enough to ask a question. I sat alone in my office after reading the full document. I was not angry at that moment. I was tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. Sloan called me the following morning. She said, your family has a plan. They know what your company is worth. They paid a lawyer to look into family financial obligation laws in your state. They also inquired about informal loan arrangements between relatives without written contracts. I said nothing. She continued, the request for $50,000 was not spontaneous. It was a test to see if you would comply before the larger ask came. After that call ended, I sat at my desk and thought about Finton. He was in his final year of architecture school. He was living at home. He did not know the house had a loan against it. He did not know any of what I now knew. I picked up my phone and called Sloan back. I need to buy a property before Finton's graduation. Cash purchase. Title goes in his name from day one. We have 6 weeks. She asked budget. I said, somewhere between $500,000 and $600,000. Close to his school, near public transit, something he can build on later. She said, I will have a list for you tomorrow. I did not call my dad to set up a meeting. I sent him a single text message. I want to meet at my office, Wednesday at 2 in the afternoon. There is something important I need to discuss. No explanation, no extra detail. He arrived on time. He was wearing a pressed button-down shirt and his hair was neat. He was trying to make a good impression. I noticed that immediately. I offered him a seat. I did not offer anything to drink. I looked at him and said, tell me what the family's actual financial situation looks like right now. He hesitated for a moment, then shifted into a prepared explanation. He was articulate and organized. He had clearly rehearsed this. He described what he called a family financial restructuring period and proposed creating a shared family fund. My contribution to this fund would start at $300,000. The stated purposes were paying down one portion of outstanding debt, covering Leora's first-year residency costs, and holding a reserve for shared family needs. When he finished, he sat back and waited. I asked, can you show me the legal documentation for this fund? He said, this is an internal family matter. It does not need formal documentation. I nodded, then it is not a fund. It is an informal transfer of money with no contract. I opened my laptop and turned the screen toward him. On it was a 12-page legal document, a trust agreement I had signed with my attorneys 6 months earlier, shortly after my company passed the 8-figure revenue mark. I explained it to him directly. All of my personal assets, including stock holdings, real estate, and liquid reserves, had been transferred into an irrevocable trust. I could not withdraw funds from that trust for personal gifts or informal transfers. Any access to those assets required approval from a 3-person oversight board. None of those 3 people were related to me. He stared at the screen. The careful, pleasant expression he had arrived with was gone. He said, "You did this before you came to meet me, which means you already knew." I said, "Yes." His voice went up. "This is family money we helped build. We sacrificed for you. We gave you everything when you were growing up and now you are." I interrupted him. I kept my voice level. "You did not pay a single dollar of my tuition. I can document every payment I made myself. Can you confirm that?" He went quiet. I continued. "I know about the $1 million debt. I know about the license revocation. I know about what happened with Leora at her previous program." I did not elaborate. I let those sentences sit. His face went pale. He sat back down. He had been standing without realizing it. I said, "I am not going to transfer any money. Not 50,000, not 300,000, not any amount. I'm also not going to interfere in whatever decisions the family makes going forward. That is your business." I stood up and walked to the door. "I have a 3 o'clock meeting. You can find your way out." After he left, I called Sloane. "Where are we on the property?" She said, "The unit on Caldwell Street is available. 1,200 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 3rd floor, Parkview. The seller accepted the cash offer this morning. Closing is in 3 weeks." I said, "Put Finton's name on everything from the start. I do not want my name anywhere on the title." Finton graduated on a Saturday morning in May after 5 years in the architecture program. He was the first person in our immediate family to study engineering of any kind. Our father had once called that choice impractical because it was not medicine or law. Finton had not argued. He had simply gone and done it. I flew in from San Francisco the day before. I had made this trip every year regardless of what the family dynamic felt like, and this year I had an additional reason to be there. The graduation ceremony took place on the university lawn. I sat in the family section and took photographs when Finton's name was called. My mom sat beside me. I noticed she became more attentive once the program listed Leora as a guest speaker representing alumni of the pre-med track, an addition my mother had clearly arranged and mentioned to everyone within earshot. Finton crossed the stage in his cap and gown. He looked out at the audience once, found my face and gave one small nod. I nodded back. Before the family walked to the cars to drive to the restaurant my dad had booked, I pulled Finton aside. We stood near the edge of the parking area, away from everyone else. I said quietly, "I have something for you tonight. I wanted to tell you before the dinner so you have a moment to process it privately." I handed him a small envelope. Inside was a key, a property address, and a 1-page summary of the purchase. A condominium unit on Caldwell Street, 1,200 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 3rd floor, park facing. Purchase price, $580,000 paid in full. Owner of record, Finton, no liens, no cosigner, no conditions. He read it once, read it again, then looked up at me and said, "You are serious?" I said, "Your name has been on the title since closing. The keys are yours. There is nothing to pay back." He did not cry. He pulled me into a hug and held on without saying anything. I stood there and thought about every dinner table where he had sat at the far end eating whatever was left, never asked for his opinion on anything, never recognized for a single thing he was working toward. The dinner was at an upscale Italian restaurant in the city center. My father had chosen it. The table had fresh flowers, wine, and an expensive menu. It was a choice meant to project a certain image, not to celebrate Finton specifically. Conversation at the table centered on Leora and her residency. Evander described their wedding plans in detail. My mother asked Leora about a family ring. At one point my father turned to Finton and asked, "So what are your plans going forward?" Then he reached for the wine and began pouring for Evander before Finton finished answering. Finton stopped mid-sentence, looked down at his menu and said nothing more. When the main course was being served, I set my utensils down, placed my hands on the table and spoke clearly enough for everyone seated to hear. "I want to say something before we eat. Today is Finton's graduation. I have a gift for him." My mother smiled in the way people smile when they expect a toast. I continued, "I purchased a condominium unit on Caldwell Street, 1,200 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 3rd floor, Parkview. The paperwork was finalized 3 weeks ago. Finton is the sole owner. The purchase was $580,000 paid in cash. There are no loans, no repayment terms, and no conditions attached. Silence. Leora set her fork down. My dad straightened in his chair. My mother looked at my father. Finton was looking at the table, one hand in his jacket pocket where the envelope was. My father was the first to speak. He had lost control of his tone. How much did you spend on that? I said, $580,000. He responded without pausing. That money was supposed to go toward paying off Leora's loans. The table went completely still. Evander slowly set down his knife and fork. Leora stared at our father. My mother closed her eyes. My father realized what he had said, but it was already out. I looked directly at him and kept my voice even. You just said something very significant, and since you said it in front of everyone here, I want to make sure everyone understands the full picture. I took out my phone, opened a document, and set the screen face up in the center of the table where it was visible to everyone seated nearby. I spoke without rushing. Our family is carrying $1 million in total debt. The house is collateralized against a private loan. Dad's professional license was revoked by regulators 18 months ago for providing advice that harmed clients. Leora started, "This is not the time or place." I continued without stopping. There is also a disciplinary record from your previous program related to an exam irregularity, and there is a documented discrepancy between the test scores on your graduate application and the official scores on record. Leora stood up. Those accusations are. I said, I am not here to accuse anyone. I am here because today belongs to Finton. But when Dad stated that this money was supposed to pay Leora's debts, he confirmed that the family had a plan to use my money without asking me. I want everyone at this table to understand that clearly. Evander leaned toward Leora and said something in a low voice. My mother sat with her hands in her lap and did not look up. My father stared at the center of the table. Finton pushed his chair back and stood. He looked at me and said, "Are you done eating?" I said, "I am." He said, "Let's go." I reached into my bag, set my credit card on the table to cover my portion of the bill and stood. The two of us walked out together. I did not look back at the table. 3 months after that dinner, the bank began the formal foreclosure process on my parents' home. 5 months after the dinner, they moved out. They relocated to a smaller house in another state, moving in with my mother's younger sister. The social world my parents had built over 30 years in their city did not follow them. My father submitted an application to have his professional license reinstated. It was denied. He applied to several financial consulting roles at smaller firms, but his record created a barrier at each one. He eventually took a part-time bookkeeping position at an insurance office. My mother lost contact with most of her close social circle within the following year. 3 women she had been friends with for more than 2 decades gradually stopped reaching out. One of them later told a mutual acquaintance, "We found out the truth, and we just did not know what to say." The residency program where Leora was training received a formal complaint from an anonymous source. I was not the one who filed it, and I do not know who did. The complaint referenced the earlier disciplinary matter from her previous program and requested a formal review. The program opened an internal investigation. During that investigation, reviewers found additional inconsistencies in Leora's clinical documentation records. The situation escalated beyond what I had known about when I showed the document at the dinner table. Leora was placed on suspension pending the outcome of the investigation. A suspension at that stage of a residency meant losing a full year of training, which carries serious weight in that field. Evander ended the engagement 4 weeks after the dinner. He sent Leora a short text message and did not call. I learned this from Finton, not from anyone else in the family. When I heard about it, I did not feel satisfied. I felt nothing in particular. I sat with that for a moment, then went back to my work. Finton moved into the Caldwell Street unit within 2 weeks of the graduation dinner. His first text to me from the new address said, "Moved in. Do you want to come over for dinner this week?" That was the first time anyone in my family had invited me somewhere simply because they wanted me there. Over the following months, Finton and I began meeting regularly. He told me about the architecture projects he was starting to work on. I told him about the Series B fundraising round my company was preparing for. We talked as equals. There was no performance, no scorekeeping, no tension underneath the words. 4 months after the graduation dinner, Finton called me with an idea. He wanted to start his own architecture firm focused on designing affordable housing for lower-income residents. He had drawings. He had a business plan. He needed initial capital. I asked him to send me the plan. I read the entire document carefully and asked him several specific questions about projected timelines, cost structures, and target markets. Then I said, "I am not going to give you money. I am going to invest in your company as a formal investor. We will put a legal contract in place. You will have full operational control, and if the business succeeds, we both benefit. If you are comfortable with that structure, I will have my attorney draft the agreement." He said yes. One evening, I was sitting alone in a hotel room in Seattle during a trade conference. I thought about the full arc of everything from that phone call on the couch to where I was now. I did not hate my parents. I never had. But I understood something that I had been circling around for years without saying directly. I had spent a long time waiting for acknowledgement from people who were not capable of giving it. Not because I was invisible, but because the direction of their attention had been fixed long before I arrived at the table. I was not waiting anymore. I sent Finton a message. "I will be back next week. Are you free for lunch?" He replied in under a minute. "Yes, I found a ramen place you will like." I put the phone down. That was enough. 6 months after the dinner, my mother sent me a text. It was short and did not include an apology. It said, "Hope you are well." I read it, thought for a moment, and replied, "I am, hope you are too." Nothing more, nothing less. I did not know what our relationship would look like going forward. I accepted that I did not know. My company kept growing. Finton's firm signed its first contract 8 months after he launched it. And my life, which I had built entirely on my own from a folding table in a garage, continued in the direction I had chosen. I do not have a simple lesson to wrap this up with. I just know that there is a difference between being unseen and being without value. I spent years confusing those two things. The moment I stopped confusing them, everything changed. Not overnight, not without pain, but it changed. Now I want to hear from you. If your family ever treated you like an ATM while completely ignoring everything you had built, drop a comment below and tell me your story. And if you have ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting yourself, what did you do? I read every single comment. If this story hit home for you, please hit the like button right now. It takes 1 second and it helps this channel reach people who need to hear stories like this one. Subscribe if you have not already so you do not miss what comes next. And share this video with someone in your life who has been the overlooked one, the one who always gives and never gets recognized. They need to know they are not alone. Thank you for spending this time with me today. You took time out of your day to sit with this story, and that means a great deal. Take care of yourself, protect what you have built, and remember, the people who never asked about your journey do not get to claim credit for your destination.